You're live.
All right, welcome here. We are now live again with another storm that we're tracking. This one's headed into Sebastian County. The reason we're tracking this is that storm earlier that had that tornado potential with it, and now it looks like it's transitioned over to an intense wind potential. As you can see, a considerable damage tag has been added to this for 70-mile-per-hour winds. So there is a potential that we could see some wind damage from this, just because when you step from that 60-mile-per-hour threshold to the 70-mile-per-hour threshold, that's when you start to see a little bit more in terms of that wind damage potential step up. So again, this is for portions of LaFleur and Sebastian counties. This includes areas such as Greenwood, Podo, Shady, Pocola, and Panama. And that's what we've got going on here with this storm. I'll step out of the way so you can see some of those communities there that are included in this. We'll also zoom in and just show you. Notice this little area right here where it looks like it's bowing out. That is indicative of some intense winds. We're talking up to 70 miles an hour. So notice where these colors, compared to earlier, if you were watching with us, these are much brighter, meaning that they're stronger winds. So again, the radar may not be interpreting this too well between scans, but when you start to get into these brighter greens, that's when you're looking at the potential for some stronger winds in the form of 70-mile-per-hour winds with that bowing segment there. So Rock Island, likely getting 70-mile-per-hour winds. There's no tornado warning with this, but when you have 70-mile-per-hour winds, you're going to want to stay away from those westerly windows, just because these winds coming in, if anything kicks up in the yard, it could have the potential that it could smack the window, create some damage to siding. So stay away from those westerly windows as this moves in, even southwesterly windows as that moves in with this intense wind potential. And again, as you can see right there, that little bowing segment there, that's indicative of those stronger winds. Also watching, there's still a little bit of rotation with this, not an immediate tornado potential, but it's also something to keep in mind. Here's a look at that track. Rock Island around the next 2 minutes or so. Bonanza around 6:44, Enterprise at 6:46. We'll see Greenwood eventually 6:55, and then Central City around 7:03. Some of those other communities are included in that track as well. Again, this is for 70-mile-per-hour winds. We're not talking any sort of immediate tornado potential with this, but when you start to get into that 70-mile-per-hour wind threshold, it doesn't really matter. It will create some wind damage to buildings, to trees, so just keep that in mind. A pretty substantial risk for winds is moving into the area here shortly. And again, still noticing just a little bit of rotation there onto the westerly part of this storm. So again, not an immediate tornado potential, but that also may be something we need to be watching to the west of 112 near Williams. So
Cameron.
What?
There's a community a lot of folks there are going to know is Cameron. So just to the west of Cameron, southwest of Rock Island.
Awesome, and thank you. Yeah, so communities of Cameron, Rock Island, Williams. This is to the east of Tona. Is that how I say that? Apologize if I butchered that there. But you can see Williams. That little area of rotation is right over Williams near Cameron. That's approaching Highway 112. So that's something we need to watch. Over the last couple scans, I've noticed that looks to be coming back a little bit. So that's something else we need to watch. But in the meantime, the main thing that we're talking about with this 70-mile-per-hour wind potential, Hackett, Cameron, New Ginny, Pocola, these communities. Pocola, excuse me.
I'll help you out there. Pocola, yep.
Sorry, the Texas boy here, first time, some of these communities. So bear with me as I butcher these names. So I apologize for that, but eventually I'll get there. So you can see 70-mile-per-hour winds. Again, Pocola, Panama.
Pocola. I'm going to help you out.
Pocola,
yep.
Sorry. And then Shady Point. So that's a look at what we've got there. And you can see it's very healthy thunderstorm there. That is looking more intense than it was earlier. Still seeing that bowing segment. So 70-mile-per-hour winds are going to be, of course, the primary concern we have with this. So again, if you're in Fort Chaffee, Greenwood, you're going to want to be, indoors just because of this damaging wind potential. Even if there is no tornado, 70-mile-per-hour winds, that'll kick up some loose outdoor objects. That'll kick up the lawn furniture. It'll create some damage to maybe some siding and some trees. So when you step up from that 60 mile per hour wind threshold to 70, the damage potential increases with it as well. So stay away from those westerly windows, southwesterly windows, because anything that's loose, it may smack the side of the house or the window. So just better to stay away from those westerly windows with this increasing wind potential. So you can see that loop. Notice just how that's continuing to bow as it makes its way to the north and east. So very healthy, impressive little bowing segment that we've got there. So wouldn't surprise me if we see this damaging wind potential maintain the same intensities for the next little bit as it continues to make its way to the north and east. So eventually Greenwood, this will move into that area here shortly. So again, if you're outdoors right now in these areas, make sure that you get inside, because not only is there this intense wind potential, but there's also quite a bit of lightning with it as well. So we'll take a look at that here in a minute. But here's a look at that time of arrival for some of these communities. Again, if you're in any of these areas, we're not talking tornado right now. So if you're just now tuning in with us on 5 Plus, Facebook, YouTube, and you're wondering why are we on 70 mile per hour winds, that's a intense damaging wind potential moving into portions of LaFleur and Sebastian County. So Jensen, right around now, Hackett in just a couple of moments. Same with Bonanza, 6:43. Dayton around 6:59. If you're in any of these communities and you're doing any sort of outdoor activities, make sure that you move that inside here. And
I think one of the things to note, Joshua, with this specific cell is, a lot of times severe thunderstorm warnings issued for 60 plus mile per hour winds. What we're seeing with this specific storm is with that bowing segment, those straight line wind potentials are up to about 70 or so. So this is not necessarily the garden variety severe thunderstorm warning that sometimes we see. In fact, the Weather Service has actually labeled it a warning with the considerable tag, given the wind potential coming out of that. In fact, at the radar beam level, 1,000 feet up, so we're not talking too high above the surface. We're getting about 60 or so mile per hour winds right now. Some of that very well could be mixing to the surface at around 70. That's enough to certainly cause a little bit of damage and certainly toss around, as Joshua said, some loose lawn furniture, some light twigs, some limbs, some trees, things of that nature. This is some intense winds getting ready to come into Sebastian County, now moving out of LaFleur, right now on top of the Arkansas-Oklahoma state line.
Yeah, and as he mentioned there too, the considerable damage tag. One thing that I want to note too is, you don't want to be outdoors under a tree if you're near this, especially if it's a drier tree, maybe a slightly dead tree as well, because these winds, it'll easily knock over a tree, break over some dead limbs. So don't be outside under a tree. Don't be outside in general with any of this. This is not your typical severe thunderstorm warning with that 60 mile per hour wind potential. It may not sound like a lot, but 10 mile per hour difference as we step up from 60 to 70, that damage threshold increases considerably. So, it's self-explanatory. There's a big jump from 60 to 70, and with that, stay away from those westerly windows, southwesterly windows, just because these are going to be some intense winds. There may be some tree damage, maybe even some power line damage if a tree were to fall over onto, a power pole or a power box or anything like that. So don't be surprised if maybe some power outages occur from this with that wind potential as well. Translating that down, just above the surface, it's around 60. It may be translating closer to 70 at the surface. So as Scott mentioned just a second ago, even though it may not look that impressive with some of these samplings that we have there above the surface, it may be that way aloft and then translating differently once it makes its way to the ground level. So again, 70 mile per hour winds, you're going to be aware of that. Rock Island, Hackett, and as we make our way closer to Bear Hollow Road, some of these areas in between are 253, 112, especially if you're driving. This is going to be one of those things where it's going to be difficult to drive as well. So, don't park under any sort of overpass and wait until this is passed. You don't want to be underneath an overpass in the middle of the road. That's dangerous to you and other drivers. If you're in the path of these winds and it's difficult for you to drive, if you see a gas station you can safely pull over to, get into the building. Don't stay under the awning with these winds, just because once we start to get to that 70 mile per hour threshold, sometimes, especially if it's an older gas station, these may get blown over if the winds are intense enough. So just pull over, find a safe and sturdy structure, a grocery store or something, but don't park underneath an overpass with these winds. What?
Sorry to cut you off. A couple of things to
you're good.
pass along there. Rotation seemingly has come down a little bit. I think that's some good news for us. I still see quite a significant damaging wind signature when you look at those radar velocities right there. Those brighter colors, I know it sounds so elementary, but those brighter colors equate to much higher wind speeds getting ready to move right across the Oklahoma-Arkansas state line. So we're talking about southern Fort Smith, south side of Fort Smith there. If you live along anywhere between Hackett, Greenwood, into the Fort Smith, Bloomer, Midlands, Mansfield area, that's where those winds are about to get ready to peak, especially into Hackett and let's say southern Fort Smith. That's where I think those winds are going to be the strongest over the next couple of minutes. Not too later down the road is going to be Greenwood, next in line, eventually Bloomer as this storm continues to push off towards the northeast. Rotation potential, never was going to be a high-end tornado potential. Top of day, did see a little bit of rotation that prompted that warning earlier. It's still there, but it's lower than it was and lower than it has been in quite some time. So right now, to me, this appears to be primarily a damaging wind threat and some heavy rain getting ready to move into a good chunk of the river valley.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier with how close we are to the radar site, for those who are wondering, this little white circle you see here, that's the radar in Fort Smith. Notice how close we are to that in proximity. It's not like we're looking in Benton County where it's a little bit higher and it's a little bit tougher to see. We are right at that radar level, pretty much where the storm is moving into. So we're probably a good 5 to 10 miles away from where that beam is finally making its way higher up into the atmosphere. So that's still relatively close to the surface. That's probably the closest we can get where it's not going to be kind of that sloppy cone of silence that you see right there. So, when we get this close and we see these winds, it's a pretty good indicator that we could have some intense winds. So we're this close. We're seeing those intense winds. We want to make sure that you're sheltering indoors. We're not talking sheltering for a tornado. But we do want to let you know 70-mile-per-hour winds are possible with that storm. Elsewhere around the region, some showers, even maybe some rumbles of thunder here and there. We're not talking widespread lightning with it in northwest Arkansas. So if you're in northwest Arkansas, rain's going to start to pick up. I know we got the Naturals game going on right now. So, they'll probably be able to play through some of this rain activity. Lightning, of course, they're going to have to stop the game just because, we got safety to follow. But right now it doesn't look like we have any sort of lightning necessarily in northwest Arkansas. So just some healthier pockets of moderate, maybe even some brief heavy rainfall with that there. The main activity that we got going on right now is in Sebastian and LaFleur counties. That's the only warning we got going on right now as well. And you can see that is a pretty healthy storm still. Again, that rotation potential has come down. The good news is today we had ingredients enough to where it prompted a watch and an earlier warning for a tornado. Right now, we don't have a tornado warning, anything like that. We don't even have the tornado possible tag with that warning anymore. This was not one of those days where we had all the ingredients favorable for, long track tornadoes or even a considerable supercell risk. This was one of those things where there was just enough ingredients for maybe a spin up or two, but overall, it was not an intense or an impressive day in terms of tornadic parameters. So right now, it's one of those things where we may get a storm that pulses up. It may produce some damaging winds. Of course, we got that tornado watch for portions of our southern counties that we'll keep an eye on some of those storms. But to reduce fear, we're not talking necessarily tornado right now, but we are talking damaging wind potential. 70-mile-per-hour winds, even though it's not a tornado, it can still cause quite a bit of damage. And another thing that I just thought about too, if you're in a mobile home, it's probably a good idea. If you're in Greenwood, if you're in Barling, get to a sturdy building now before the storm moves in, because sometimes, depending on the type of mobile home or the trailer or the RV that you're in, sometimes these 70-mile-per-hour winds, they can topple over or tip over an RV or a mobile home, depending on, where it's facing and, how well anchored it is. So even though it's not a tornado, sometimes when we get to that 70-mile-per-hour threshold, it can create enough damage where it could do some mobile home damage, knock that over. So just to be on the safe side, make sure that if you're in any of these areas in a mobile home with that 70-mile-per-hour wind risk, with time, get to shelter now. Again, not a tornado, but get to a sturdy shelter, ride it out. You don't really want to be in something like that with 70-mile-per-hour winds because that can create some damage to that. Damage to homes, damage to trees, and of course, it wouldn't surprise me if we may get some power outages with these intense winds as well. So we'll probably have to be watching that here over the next little bit as well.
Warning has been allowed to expire for LaFleur County. The area producing those damaging winds, 60 to 70 miles per hour, has now crossed the state line. Warning will continue until 7:15, so exactly 30 more minutes for Sebastian County. But the good news for those folks there in LaFleur County, some definitely heavy rain and probably even some breezy winds are going to continue through Pensacola, pretty much east of Panama and Podo. But the worst of the winds, the severe aspect of this storm, has now crossed the state line into Arkansas.
Yeah, and you can see that there. If you saw that box flashing just a second ago, it was trimming out this area in LaFleur County, as Scott mentioned. So areas in LaFleur County, the worst of it has passed. The strongest winds are now in the Arkansas side of the county coverage area. So again, this is your early heads up for Greenwood, some of those communities nearby as well, as this continues to move off to the north and east. You still got some time. There's still some rain right now. The worst of it hasn't made it there yet to Greenwood. But again, stay away from those westerly windows, southwesterly windows, just because sometimes these types of winds, they can create damage. It can pick up loose items outdoors, tree limbs, stuff like that. It can damage siding to homes. It can create all sorts of issues. Here's a look at the Fort Smith camera, and you can see we got some rain moving in there as well. And fortunately, this view doesn't look like it's too breezy. Just looks like it's just a decent little summer shower.
This is going to be on the east side of town there at Mercy Hospital along Rogers Avenue.
Yeah, and you can see, fortunately, not too crazy going on there. Podo camera here.
It's looking off towards the west. Let me spin that around and we'll take a look at that cell from Podo. Give us a good view of the back side of it. Looks like some sunshine breaking out on the other side though.
Oh yeah, that may be a pretty sunset depending on how clear it gets here in a little bit as well.
There we go. Live looking Podo, looking off towards the east, over towards Fort Smith, and you can see clouds are definitely darker there as that storm departs Podo and continues its track into Arkansas.
Yeah, and fortunately, that is the only storm that we have now in terms of warnings. If you saw from those Northwest Arkansas cameras, most of it's clear. That's not going to be the case over the next little bit because Northwest Arkansas finally getting our round of showers, maybe a rumble of thunder or two, but right now we're not talking severe. We're not talking what's happening down here in the River Valley. So those of us in the River Valley near Greenwood and portions of Madison County, you can see.
Wind signatures come down a bit as that storm does cross the state line. I will tell you, I think there's still some high winds in Hackett, and I think those probably are going to be translating over towards Greenwood, eventually up towards Barling. Right now, though, it does look like it's not as impressive as it was. And to kind of illustrate that, what I'll do is I'm going to back this up. Not many scans, but maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, and you can see not only do you have those really bright colors, a very pronounced bowing segment, and that bowing segment, or that looks kind of like a comma or a parenthesis, that's often a very telltale sign of some strong straight line winds rushing out of that storm. You can really see it peak right there, crossing just east of Rock Island, right on the state line as it pushes northeast into Hackett. Probably got some high winds, but that signature just becomes less pronounced. Those colors aren't as bright. It's not as structured or organized as it once was. So potentially this storm is weakening, which would be some really good news for us. Right now, though, I continue to see at least some signature enough to tell me, we've probably got some high winds coming through southern Sebastian County.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, those colors, they've come down quite a bit. Notice that when it was back towards Rock Island, we were starting to get closer to those brighter blues in terms of those wind speeds. So, unfortunately, it wouldn't surprise me if the Rock Island area probably saw some damage from those winds just because that was where it was more intense. Of course, we were looking higher up, but that means that there's a potential that it was translating to faster winds at the surface. So, again, it wouldn't surprise me if some of LaFleur County got some damage on the eastern sides just from some intense 70-mile-per-hour winds. Right now, it has come down some. Curious if the Weather Service is going to update that here in just a little bit, if they're also kind of in the same thought with that. But right now, same thing. Just get ready for severe winds if you're in Greenwood. Some of those communities there, just because, again, even though it has come down just a little bit, two things. One, there is still enough of a threat for some damaging winds, regardless if it's 60 or 70. There's still going to be some issues with that as well. The other thing, too, is, this may not be done. This is one of those things where, like we've been talking about with the potential for that tornado risk earlier, it's one of those things where it may look like it starts to go away and then it comes back right up, in a short amount of time, and then it will just go away and it kind of just cycles through. So, we may not be completely done with this. I still think that there could be some strong winds with this, but right
Come
now,
down to 60. The warning has been updated as kind of what we were just discussing, that not as pronounced of a signature, coming down to 60 though. So still severe, but certainly better than 70.
that is certainly some good news because, like we've been talking about, there's a big difference in the damage threshold between 60 and 70 miles an hour. Even though 10-mile-per-hour difference doesn't sound that way, it just is. Here's a look at some of those counties, or some of those towns of arrival, excuse me. And thank you, Scott, for putting that up there. You can see Fort Smith Regional, outside of the warning, but still maybe some gusty winds there. That'll be around 655. Greenwood at 658. We've been talking about Greenwood again, just because that's probably where some of the more stronger winds are going to be located. Catcher 709 and Bloomer at 712. So that's a look at some of those communities that are going to be in the path of this little storm here. And again, the good news is that warning has allowed to decrease the potential from 70-mile-per-hour winds down to 60. So, 60-mile-per-hour winds are a little bit more manageable than 70, and hopefully it just continues to weaken on from here, just because 70-mile-per-hour winds, that can create all sorts of problems. So, whenever we can drop that and go back to the minimum threshold for a severe thunderstorm warning, which is 58 miles an hour or greater, so base severe thunderstorm warning is 60. If we can get to a base severe thunderstorm warning with this and then continue to weaken from there, that's some good news. We won't have any sort of damage potential with that anymore. And here's a look at the Fort Smith. Is this the Arkansas Health College?
Yeah, this is the ACHE. Yep.
Okay. So, and you can see just there's even some gusty winds at times there. Not necessarily intense winds, but you can see just some gusty winds, very, very heavy rainfall. So the other thing that you want to consider too, again, if you're driving in this may be treacherous driving conditions where you're not able to see the road in front of you. There's some gusty winds, heavy rainfall. It may be scary. We're not talking necessarily anything intense with this portion of the storm. But if you're worried about driving, just pull over to a gas station, or, if you can find a grocery store or something, and just get in there for a little bit until it passes. If you feel safer instead of driving in it, just wait it out for a little bit, just because this is some intense rainfall occurring with that as well. We may ought to take a look at the rainfall rates here in just a minute, because this is some heavy rainfall there. We've seen a lot of rainfall over the last couple weeks, continuing to get some more rainfalls here, so it wouldn't surprise me. Especially considering that portions of the river valley are usually more flood prone, especially near the Fort Smith area. Some of those low-lying areas and areas that are prone to flooding, would not surprise me if some of those locations pick up a couple of inches of rain and then have some localized flooding potential there. Broad view here. Northwest Arkansas, again, showers moving into the area. Really not a whole lot in terms of lightning, if any, for Northwest Arkansas. So the good news is for the Naturals game coming up, actually right now it started, I believe, at 6:05. For the Naturals game, there's some rainfall moving in, but there's no lightning. So if it's light to moderate rain, they may be able to play it out. You may want to head to the gift shop, just get a raincoat and wait it out there as well. Unless there's any lightning, that may not be enough of an issue for that. So, we'll be watching that elsewhere around the region. The only thing that we have going on in terms of severe weather is this one here to the south in the river valley. And this one has been producing potentially 70-mile-per-hour winds at times, but it looks like it's now up to 70 or 60-mile-per-hour winds. The good news is, too, for those who are wondering, is there a hail potential with this? The answer is no. It's less than 7/10 of an inch of hail with it. It doesn't surprise me that there was a little bit higher potential further to the west near Poto. That was, I believe, back when this had that potential for maybe a tornado with it earlier. But as you can see, really, really small hail, if anything. So we're talking smaller than pennies will probably be the potential there. And, there's a little bit of an area still south of Greenwood. Not necessarily in terms of rotation, but that looks like that could still be some damaging wind potential there in that last scan there. So
Sure. Let's go take a tighter look at that.
And that just kind of piqued my curiosity, just because some of those reds are starting to get a little bit brighter again over the last couple scans. That may be a new area of some damaging winds we need to watch. So right now, fortunately, it doesn't look like 70 at this time, but still, this is one of those things that we mentioned earlier that we may not be done with it. It could very well pulse back up and produce some damaging winds on the more intense side again. Or it just maintains a minimum severe thunderstorm warning criteria, and then we just have to watch it as it continues to move through. But may want to watch this little area here just to the south of Highway 10, north of Dayton, south of Greenwood there, just because that may be a new area of damaging winds trying to develop there as well.
It's going to be pushing up towards the northeast, so at some point, whether or not this thing continues to maintain its severe weather warning, which I will tell you, and if you hear me tapping off screen, I'm talking with the Weather Service, and we're both kind of on the same page here that, yeah, it's weakening. The question is going to become, can it weaken quick enough that we can allow that warning to expire, or is there going to be a need for an additional downstream warning? Should that be the case, that warning would probably include the southern half of Franklin, depending on what the Weather Service out of Little Rock does, portions of Logan County. But I'll tell you right now, and you've probably heard Joshua and I talking about it in real time, this thing has been weakening rather quickly. In fact, once it was moving through Rock Island and Pensacola, we were looking at some pretty intense winds, up to potentially 70 or so miles per hour. Now we're down to 60. Overall radar presentation less organized. And what gives me even more confidence in that, you can kind of see where the Doppler radar site is. We've got a great view into the heart of this storm. So the quality of the data is certainly going to be rather high. It's tough to get better quality data than that cell right now moving through Sebastian County. So with some degree of confidence, we can tell you the last several scans, winds are coming down. Heavy rain continues. It's a slow moving cell right now northeast at 35 miles per hour. So we'll probably have a little bit of flooding on those low-lying roadways. You know those places that, gosh, it floods every time it sprinkles. Probably going to have a little bit of that going on here over the next couple of minutes. Heavy rain getting ready to move into Fort Smith. However, here's the thing. Most of Fort Smith and certainly all of Van Buren, Kibler, Roland, you're not included in this warning. That shower activity does extend towards the north. Well, in fact, it extends all the way into northwest Arkansas, but that aspect of this line is not severe. In fact, when you look area-wide, you'll notice there's only the one severe thunderstorm warning for Sebastian County. Everything else is sub-severe, and I would tell you it's very much sub-severe, meaning it's not even close to severe weather limits. I think the one warning we've got right now, it may be working itself out of a warning, if you know what I'm saying. I think it's on the weakening trend, which would be some great news for us. These showers will continue throughout the rest of the evening. You'll notice there might, well, I shouldn't say that, for the next hour or two this evening. And then we may see some lingering rain into the overnight hours. I think, though, most of us are probably going to be fine overnight tonight. It's this one main batch of rain that we're going to be concerned with. Severe weather potential overall, relatively low to begin with, but that today is just one of those examples that there's a reason that we always have to be here. We always have to be on guard if there's even the slightest bit of a threat. And that's what we're looking at out there this afternoon, now this evening. Looks like we might have had a report of a tree blown over, blocking the road partially on Highway 45. That would be south of Hackett. Now, of course, we were talking about Hackett when those winds were coming through. They have since weakened, so I don't necessarily suspect there's a lot of necessarily high damaging winds to the degree of which there were, up to 70. Right now, we're probably looking at anywhere between 40 to 60 as that cell continues to move through. Greenwood, things are getting allowed for you now. Heaviest of the rain is moving into town. Pensacola, hold on. You're on the backside of this cell, but that rain is going to be rather loud. Winds are probably going to get pretty breezy as well. Charleston is upstream from this. You've probably got some light rain moving into the Charleston community as we speak. However, that's all that is right now. Expect that to pick up in intensity over the next several minutes. In addition to Charleston, you've got Lavaca, Barling, Washburn also going to be in the path of this storm that as of right now is severe. Our warning runs for 16 more minutes. Weather Service has it set to expire at 7:15. It's weakening. Let's hope it can continue that case so we don't need any additional warnings. But as of right now, that is going to be the situation that we're looking at. A tornado watch remains in effect for LaFleur and Scott County until 10 o'clock this evening. I'll tell you, however, as we speak, the Weather Service is canceling counties out of the watch that are back off towards the west and portions of Oklahoma that we don't currently cover. So my suspicion is, as this line continues to track towards the east, the already marginal severe weather potential as is, will continue to decrease, and they'll also be able to expire. Initially, LaFleur and then the Weather Service out of Little Rock likely at some point we'll have to consider. They'll have a discussion of whether or not they can cancel Scott County out of that watch. This one warning remains in effect. Heavy rain moving through Fort Smith, getting ready to move into Alma, Mountainburg, and northwest Arkansas. It's not near as heavy. It's light to moderate at best. Siloam Springs having some good soaking showers. Rain now moving in to the south side of Fayetteville. That's going to continue pushing towards the northeast into places like Springdale, Rogers, Bentonville. It's taken its time getting there, but you do certainly have some rain that is tracking your direction. Area-wide, when we look at some of the rainfall rates that we've seen, and this is going to look a little psychedelic. The computer's thinking about it right now and it's going to try to figure out what the rainfall rate is per hour. And you can see we had some really intense rains as that storm was exiting LaFleur, even portions of Sequoyah County. Now the core of it is in Sebastian, but even now you don't find near as many of those bright reds and purples, which tell us yes, from all aspects, from the winds coming down to the rain rates coming down to the lightning count coming down, all signs indicate right now we have a marginally severe storm at best that's doing its best to weaken, and that is some good news for us. Area-wide, you're noticing live radar shows mostly just rain out there. In fact, lightning count over the last several minutes, Joshua, and I'll turn this back to you, is at 109 strikes over the last 10 minutes, which is a reasonable amount, but it's certainly down from what it was a few minutes ago.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think the nail the head on that. Watches are going to eventually get dropped just because this is going to be the main concern, but also there's quite a bit of lightning with it. So you're going to want to be indoors regardless of, if it's producing damaging winds or not in the river valley, just because that lightning potential, don't want to be outdoors with that. Real quick, Scott, I wanted to mention LaFleur County right now. The power outage update is around 771, and I believe that was reported around 652. So waiting to see if there's a new update there. At 652 as well, there were no reported power outages in Sebastian County. So I'm hopeful that when we had those winds decrease at the radar, that maybe there may not have been any sort of power outages with that. Of course, that doesn't mean that there was no damage with it, but it looks like there is enough power outages in LaFleur County that would suggest that, maybe this damaging wind potential led to some damage there. So right now, base thunderstorm warning. We're talking 60-mile-an-hour winds. Still watching this little area of winds right here. Of course, we've been mentioning it's on the weakening side, but do want to watch these little pockets here just because, it's one of those things where, these storms, they'll pulse real quick and then all of a sudden they'll just die off real quick as well. So, right now, not talking any sort of intense winds, but we're here, we're watching it because if this were to get its act together again, we'll be watching as it makes its way off to the north and east. But right now, there's nothing screaming at me that would indicate, brighter colors, damaging wind potentials increasing. You can see, this may be translating to the surface around 30, 40, maybe 50 miles an hour right now. So
certainly lower, right? Yeah.
So definitely not those 70s that we saw earlier. You were here with us earlier when we sampled. We were getting some of those close to 60. Now we're 17, 20, noticeably different. But right now, again, nothing going on elsewhere around the river valley. Again, if this were to get its act together, then maybe areas to the north and east would have some type of warning issued. But right now, no word from the Weather Service if they're going to issue a downstream warning. And it really doesn't look like this is intensifying rapidly that would lead to more concern down the line. Of course, that could change at any time, but right now we're not talking any sort of downstream any alarms quite yet in terms of that wind potential. Here's another track. And, as we're heading off to the north and east, Charleston at 724, Riverdale at 727. Here's some other communities there as well. I apologize if I'm not talking a couple. I don't know how to produce them, and I would rather not butcher your communities the first time.
Let me help you out. I love this. I love this. This is me, Harrelton at 707, Lavaca 712, Ursula 719, Charleston, of course, 724, Riverdale 727, Chisholmville 732, Branch 733. Expect this in Peter Pender. I was just there a couple of days ago. 737, Clarksville at 743, Etna about 747, eventually into Carbon City, Driggs right around 751 to 753, Paris downtown. I was also there a couple of days ago. 758, and goodness gracious, I didn't know this showed up on our maps. 758 is the Smith Clinic. That's there in Fort Smith. Dr. J.C. Smith It's been in his family forever. I had no clue this was going to show up on our map. I just saw JC a couple of days ago. Good evening to you, JC. I didn't know your map showed up. Your clinic showed up on our map there. One of those historical landmarks that's important to a lot of folks there in Paris and Logan County. That's why that's showing up, is it's pulling some of those landmarks that a lot of folks are going to know. That track that I drew on it extends it far beyond the actual warning polygon. So if I just read off your town name, there's a decent chance that you're not actually in the warning. I just wanted to give you an extra early heads up that there could be a strong, probably not severe at that point, but a strong storm nonetheless, tracking into your neck of the woods.
Yeah, and there's a look at that track. Good to know that it has some of those landmarks on there. That is incredibly helpful. So glad it does that. That's actually pretty cool. But yeah, as Scott mentioned, there's some of those locations there. I'm going to need a dictionary here soon just so I can get used to some of these counties. My problem is the last several setups that we had, they've all been in different counties. So just as I start to learn one, then we have another event in another. So I'll eventually get there. So thank you for bearing with me. Here's a look at that. That was in Hackett, partially blocking the road. So we have a downed tree there. And of course, that was where we saw some of those more intense winds as it was starting to transition from Oklahoma to Arkansas, crossing the border there. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe we see some more damage. And we may ought to put the phone number up too, just because some of those areas have passed here. See if anyone has any sort of photos. I'll move this here real quick just to kind of get it in view, or right there, and step out of the way. So text us your reports, pictures, and videos, 479-785-5000, and do it when it's safe to do so. Don't go out there in the middle of the storm and take a video. We don't want that. Once the storm has passed and it's safe to do so. If you have any sort of damage, if you have any sort of photos or videos you'd like to share, anything from damage to if you saw a rainbow with it, just share your information. The video, make sure you let us know what town it was in. If there's something like a tree blocking a road, let us know what town and what road it's blocking, so we can pass that along to not only you at home, but also to our friends at the National Weather Service. That'll help them out with, taking in some damage reports, but also potentially helping with warnings too if a storm has passed. So, text us, send us your videos, let us know what you're seeing out there, and that's the cool thing. So radar gives us a perspective from in the sky and in the storm, but you get to be basically our eyes on the ground. So once something has passed, you get to let us know, hey, this is what happened. So that's some cool ways to kind of interact with the weather team here and help us pass on some helpful information. Over the last couple of scans too, just reflectivity-wise, Scott, that does not look as impressive as it was.
Sure doesn't.
Doesn't look like it's bowing out significantly. We're not talking higher reflectivity values either. It looks like a jumbled up sloppy mess there. So
I love jumbled up sloppy messes when it comes to this kind of stuff. One thing I will say is there is still somewhat of a bowing segment. I do think those winds may be trying to come up just a little bit, getting ready to move into Lavaca and Bloomer. And you can start to see those brighter pixels right there. Those numbers inherently don't give me a lot of heartburn like some of them did earlier, but I think they're a little bit higher. So that's going to be pretty much right now on 96 at the moment my voice is being heard by folks in Bloomer. Those winds are soon going to be picking up there as well as in Lavaca. That may be another surge of wind coming out of that storm to the north of Greenwood, getting ready to move on the south side of Lavaca into Bloomer. Right now, the warning is for up to 60, so that's going to be the ceiling, up to about 60 or so. New scan there just come in showing much of the same thing. Little pocket of winds there. You can kind of see that pink. That's going to be where we've got that highest wind speed running pretty much right now, right on top of Highway 96. I'd say 40 to 60 mile per hour is probably, I know it's kind of a broad window. Radar estimates it to be right around 30 or so. Sometimes that can mix a little bit higher, and just seeing that signature in of itself, that bowing segment, tells me it might be closer to 40 to 50.
Yeah, and this is why we're on with you live right now, is even though this may not be significant right now, notice over the last couple of scans, as Scott showed there, it's starting to pick up just a little bit. So this is one of those things where we've been talking about, the last, hour or so when we've been watching these storms, is it'll look impressive and then it won't. And then another little area will start to pulse up. And it's one of those things where they'll quickly pulse up and then they'll go away. But there is that little bowing segment there that Scott mentioned there. And we're going to be watching that. So again, if that were to strengthen. We'll be watching that very closely. We'll let you know the very latest, and we're on top of that there. But eventually down the line, if you're in any of these communities, if you're in Ursula, if you're in Charleston, if you're in Vesta, if you're in Branch, Oak Grove Church, any of these areas down the line, even if you're not in the warning right now, if this were to strengthen, then there would be an additional risk for some strong damaging winds down the line in some of these communities. Now, you're not in a warning here for some of these locations that we called out, but right now we're watching and giving you just the earliest heads up that you can get. Right now, you may not be in a warning, but it's one of those things where you want to watch because these things can easily get their act together pretty quickly. It could produce some damaging winds, and then eventually down the line, we may see another warning. So right now, no downstream warning issued or anything like that, but it's one of those things where we're watching that very closely because if things were to change, we're going to be on top of it, letting you know the very latest. So Fort Smith, you can see here, still heavy rainfall with that. Wouldn't surprise me, especially with how slow these are moving. Is this one still moving at 25 miles
It's
an hour?
at 30 right now.
Okay, so it did pick up a little bit, but still 30 miles an hour is not, it's not 40, 50, so it's not going to clear out really quickly. Wouldn't surprise me if maybe some areas in a river valley pick up an inch of rain or so with some of this activity, especially where it's training over, meaning it's going over the same areas over and over again. Some localized flooding will also be a potential there. Only warning we have right now is in Sebastian County, and it's this one right here. And we're not quite done with it yet just because we've been talking about, right now, it looks to be on the weakening side, but there's this little bowing segment right here to the north and east of Barling and to the north and east of Greenwood as well. It's very small, but Lavaca and Bloomer, you're going to want to be, probably staying away from those westerly windows just because some gusty winds may be moving in, maybe some damaging winds of up to 60, not 70 right now, but still just this little bowing segment. And what we mean by that is think of if you're like a medieval fan. Think of those old bow and arrows where it just had that curve to it. You can see just a little bit of an area there, and what that means is the wind is pushing the raindrops in a way that it looks like a bow on the radar, and that's what we call bowing segments. And there's a little one here. It's not as intense as the one we saw earlier, but still, it's one of those things that when we see these things, even if it's not alarming then, it piques our interest to where we go, hey, we may ought to watch this there. And Scott just highlighted it there. You can see that bowing segment, kind of what we're talking about there. If it's not quite clear, you can see just where it starts to curve. That's indicative that those winds may be starting to push those raindrops in a way because we have some stronger winds occurring here. So we're going to be watching this. We're going to let you know the very latest. If this were to intensify, we're going to be on top of it, letting you know what to expect. But just to be completely safe, get indoors, stay away from windows, especially westerly and southwesterly windows, just because you want to be completely safe. Just be indoors regardless, because we got lightning, we got some gusty winds. It's just not going to be fun to be out there. If you're driving in any of these communities, don't stop in an underpass to wait out the storm. That's incredibly dangerous. Pull over. If there's a sturdy building like a grocery store, a convenience store, a gas station, pull over. Just go into the gas station for a little bit. Wait till it passes, because if you're not comfortable driving in these winds and it's a little bit scary, just pull over. We're not talking tornado risk, but just wait it out. It'll be safer to drive later on there. But right now, and still holding a little bit of some of those pinks there. But the good news is we're not jumping into the bright pinks that we were seeing earlier.
Crossing 22 highway right now. 22 at Bloomer, between Bloomer and Central Cities, where those heaviest of winds are going to be pretty much at the intersection of 96 and 22. In fact, right on top of 96 and 22, you can draw it very clearly with your eye. It's those really bright pixels, those bright pinks. That's going to be that pocket of potentially 50 to 60 mile per hour straight line winds. That's moving towards Ursula, so heads up in Ursula. You need to be probably away from those westerly windows. It's certainly going to get interesting here real quick over the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, and I believe that's Feather Hill Road and Fort Smith Boulevard kind of in that little cube that you see there, some of those brighter pinks there. So again, if you're on 22, don't stop if there's an overpass and wait until it passes. You don't want to stop in the middle of the road. It may be breezy, it may be heavy rainfall, may not be fun to drive in. It's one of those things where if you can safely pull over to a convenience store and get out of the way of others in traffic, that's the best thing to do right now. Not talking any sort of tornado potential with this right now, but certainly some strong pockets of winds. So again, Bloomer, Ursula, some of these communities here, just get ready because we got some more gusty winds with this storm. It may be moving into your area here shortly. We want to give you the absolute, earliest heads up. Even
looks like that warning may have just. Oh, it's 7:15. Who knew?
Oh,
that
that's
15
some good
minutes
news.
went by really fast.
That was good. Real quick, it doesn't mean that the winds are completely gone. It's still going to be gusty, maybe some 40, 50 mile per hour winds. So still keep in mind, gusty. We got gusty winds, some lightning, absolutely heavy rain with it as well. So even though the warning has expired, we're going to be watching it behind the scenes. So if that changes, we're going to let you know, and we're going to come back and let you know what to expect, where, why, how, you name it. Just a quick view around the area. You can see northwest Arkansas. We got some rain moving in. One thing that I want to kind of mention too is some of the models didn't really handle it very well because up here in northwest Arkansas, it's kind of hit or miss with those rain, with the rain moving into the area. I certainly think a lot of us are going to see it, but you can see it's kind of all over the place in terms of light to moderate rainfall, not necessarily heavy right now. So again, we got Naturals game going on right now, so no lightning or anything with most of this. So they may be able to play through that. Rain is moving into a large portion of the area. River Valley is where the strongest storms are located. That's where we got the most lightning, the highest potential for some gusty winds with it as well. And certainly a heavy, heavy rain potential. I also want to mention, some of these areas in Sebastian County are prone to flooding, even if it's just a light rain, it seems at times. This is a heads up for some of those areas. This is some heavy rainfall. We may be dealing with a localized flooding risk with that as well. So certainly if you've lived there your entire life, you know exactly where I'm talking about. But right now, just keep in mind some of those flood-prone areas, maybe some low-lying areas with some poor drainage, that may be some flooding potential there. Otherwise, we don't have any sort of warnings right now. If that changes, of course, we'll let you know the very latest. But right now, fortunately,
Joshua, let's do this. One of the things I hate doing is I hate playing whack-a-mole. So given the fact that this warning has expired, typically that would give us enough confidence, hey, let's end the stream. Folks can handle a good old shower without us. I'm not entirely confident this thing might not post back up, so I'd like to just extend our time here a little bit longer just to prevent the situation of us having to end a stream, fire one back up, get folks over to the new stream. Let's just stay here with where we're at. Just for a little bit longer. Should this trend continue, we're going to be in fine shape. But sometimes you just can't trust these cells. Sometimes they want to pulse back up. They might run into a little pocket of energy, something in the atmosphere that allows them to re-intensify. So I hope that doesn't happen. But just for the time being, let's just stay here on the stream just for a little bit longer. If you're just now tuning into us, just now finding us, I know rain's just now moving into northwest Arkansas, arriving a little bit later than in the River Valley. We've had one severe thunderstorm warning in effect for Sebastian County. That's since been allowed to expire as the storm has weakened far below those severe weather limits. It's still a strong storm, though. That severe weather threshold, it's not arbitrary. It's highly defined. It's 60 miles per hour of straight line winds or greater, or 1 inch hail or greater. And at this point, we're falling well below that. Probably not by a whole lot, but enough that they were allowed to expire that warning. New information to pass along to you. It may not populate on my map just yet, but Leflore County, oh, it did, has been allowed to be canceled from the tornado watch that was set to expire at 10 o'clock. So now in our viewing area, we've got Scott and Polk County there as well, included in that tornado watch. Those two counties there in pink continue through 10 o'clock. I'll tell you, it's not going to be that long. In fact, more than likely, once this wave of rain pushes off towards your east and for the next hour or so, we'll allow that watch to expire as well. Those are decisions that'll be made by the National Weather Service. This one for for Scott and Polk County out of the Little Rock office, which is some good news for those folks there. Rain just now moving into northwest Arkansas. Let's work our way up and down the line. Nothing severe in northwest Arkansas, and I don't suspect any severe weather there as well. In fact, those yellows indicate to us some moderate rainfall at times, and that's going to continue for give it about 30 to 45 minutes. It's not a very quick moving system, but inevitably it will be clearing your area. Here in the River Valley, our stronger thunderstorm continues through the Fort Smith, Barling, Lavaca, now pushing to the east of Greenwood, Bloomer, and that's soon going to move into the Charleston community. That's pushing off towards the northeast, so I do think Alma probably gets clipped by part of those winds, which right now are 40 or 50 or so miles per hour, below severe. Maybe a little bit of heavy rain there as well. Certainly some heavy rain going to be moving into the Lavaca area I should have said Charleston community over the next several minutes. Central City, you're in the thick of it right now. Certainly portions of Fort Smith are, but that's not where we find any strong or severe weather. Heavy rains, no question about that. You might even be hearing a little bit of thunder, but that's likely it is. A good old-fashioned thunder shower. The strongest part, I'll even do this. I'll even kind of circle it for you just so you have an idea of where I'm thinking. The strongest portion of this cell is likely right in this general vicinity right there in that black circle there. So Central City, Greenwood, I think it's on the east side of town now, pushing off towards the east a little bit further. Not going to be of a concern for you likely over the next several minutes. Lavaca, though, right now in the middle of it, Bloomer as well. Charleston soon, branch down the line and inevitably into Peter Pender, Etna, and maybe passing up towards Ozark on this current track. It's towards the northeast right now at about 30 miles per hour, so not necessarily the quickest moving cell, which means it's probably going to dump a little bit of rain. In fact, I'm curious. Let me pull up how much rain we picked up at the Fort Smith Airport. I'll do the past 12 hours. So this is going to be 0.6 of an inch, just about. I know it's kind of cutting you off there a little bit, but just about 0.6 of an inch there. Poto at the weather station picking up a little more than 0.3 of an inch, and thus far at XNA, just 1/100th. We'll probably get a little bit more than that once this line eventually moves through the area. It's been a slow-moving line. It's been producing a lot of rain and even some storms for parts of Oklahoma for the last several hours. Now it's almost entirely in western Arkansas. A good chunk of the 5 News viewing area seeing rain. Some of it at times is heavy, but that's likely it. Right now, no current active warnings, and we're watching to see and just to make sure this one strong cell doesn't try to pulse back up. And that's kind of what we're waiting on doing. One of the most annoying things for me personally is we'll get a warning to expire. There's no threat. There's no issue. There's nothing really left to cover. So we end the stream, and just to find that cell, 10, 15, 20 minutes later decides to pulse back up, and we have to fire up a new stream, and you got to come find us. And I just don't want that to be the case for you tonight. So we're staying here for a little bit longer. We got nothing better else to do tonight. So we'll track this for, I don't know, let's give it about 5 or 10 more minutes. Make sure the weakening signals continue as they have been for the last several minutes. Assuming there won't be any other warnings, then we'll probably end the stream and call it good for the night. But it continues to produce some good soaking rains now in the southern portions of Crawford, eastern Sebastian, soon to be moving into the southern half of Franklin County.
Yeah, and you may ought to pull up the Mercy camera just to show just the heavy rainfall. I was looking at
Mercy
that
Fort Smith?
Yeah, Mercy Fort Smith. And you can see just heavy rainfall with this right now. And
slow going there on Rogers Avenue.
Yeah, and really the good news is there too.
Chroma hot, please.
And it looks like right now, it doesn't really look like this is producing any sort of gusty winds as well. I stepped back on our patio here just a second ago, and just to ease any fears for Northwest Arkansas residents, anything like that. The wind, there was no wind. It was just moderate rainfall with that. But you can see with this camera in Fort Smith, you can barely see off in the distance there. There's some heavy rainfall. So Scott showed that, I believe, was it 0.5 of an inch or 0.7 at Fort Smith earlier?
I know that was like 20 seconds ago, but my mind has already chased something else and I've already forgotten.
Oh, no worries.
We'll come back and look at that here in a little bit once this storm's passed so we can get a storm total.
No worries there. I was just going to say it wouldn't surprise me at this point that with this continued heavy rainfall, some areas are starting to push closer to an inch at this point just because it's not moving very fast. We've got lots of rainfall with it. You can even see lightning off at times with that camera as well. So right now, we're not talking anything in terms of severe weather. We're still watching this pesky little storm because, it's one of those things. It may pulse up real quick. We don't want you to go chasing us down going, all right, new warning, where are they? It's one of those things. So we're keeping an eye on this real quick. And I do want to highlight that there's really nothing that's screaming out at me right now like, hey, we've got something going on in terms of the reflectivity. We'll take a look at those winds here as well. And we'll see if anything's changed with that. Still this little bowing area of winds, but notice we're not in those pinks. It's relatively right around those darker to lighter reds, which is indicative of maybe some 40, 50, maybe 60 mile per hour winds with areas aloft, but translating to the surface, it may be closer to 30 to 50. So, yeah, and as you can see there, really not a whole lot going on there. So hopefully this means that this is going to die down, because this may be one of those things where it's just going to be a gusty storm, 30, 40 mile per hour winds. It's just one of those things with the heavy rainfall and the lightning. But hopefully we can keep that under severe limits here, as it's been doing so for the last couple of minutes here since it's dropped the warning. But really, right now, there's nothing that is jumping out at me going, this is a big deal that we need to be covering. It just looks like it's kind of a sloppy thunderstorm right now with some gusty wind potential and lightning. So certainly flash flooding potential for some of those areas in Sebastian County, even Crawford County, that are used to flooding from just a little bit of rainfall. So even though there is no, intense storms in Crawford County, some of this heavy rainfall here that's kind of skirting between the two counties, that may lead to some flash flood issues near Alma, near Fort Smith, Van Buren, some of those areas that are used to that flooding from some runoff and low-lying areas. So no flash flood warnings, anything like that. But again, just keep in mind some of those flood-prone areas may be experiencing some water runoff, especially because we've had a lot of rainfall lately. We're getting a lot of rainfall with this. Some areas up to maybe half an inch of rainfall already. So that's a look at what we've got there. No severe storms, so that's the good news. We were on with severe storms earlier, but right now, area-wide, it's one of those things where, there's really not a whole lot to talk about. Maybe some pockets of some moderate rainfall. Certainly for the Naturals game going on right now, it may be wet, it may be rainy, but we're not talking any sort of lightning. In fact, just down the road, I was looking at one of our cameras. I believe it was a Holiday Inn camera. Any rainfall looked relatively light, so it may not be impacting that game at all. And you can see here, the Springdale camera, there is some rain going on there, but overall, for the Natural game right now, it doesn't look like there's any sort of intense, bombardment of rainfall with that. So there's some rain on there. There's some rain. There's some wet roads you can see, but we're not talking, just torrential rainfall, lightning, and all of that. It's just relatively light to maybe at times moderate. So maybe they're able to squeeze in the rest of that game for this evening. And doesn't look like there's any sort of new updates coming in here. Doesn't look like the Weather Service is concerned about this either. So again, we're sticking with it for the next little bit. Again, no warnings, no anything that we're talking about. It's just one of those things where, as it moves off to the north and east, we're going to watch it because, there's just the potential that it could pulse right back up. But right now, it's not overall impressive. It's there in terms of some gusty winds, maybe 30, 40, maybe up to 50 at times, but relatively speaking, we're not seeing those bright pinks turning purple or, almost orange with those. So nothing significant in terms of those winds. So it wouldn't surprise me if Alma, Mulberry, and Charleston, if you're getting some 40 mile per hour winds or so, as well as some lightning and some heavy rainfall, but not talking anything significant there.
I think that wind signature is to me, before I go any further, I'll say this. It's a wind signature. There's no question we got some breezy winds coming out of that leading Boeing segment there, but they're honestly just really not concerning at all. I think it's going to get gusty, 40 or so mile per hour maximum right now, probably moving into Mulberry here real soon. Maybe let's say Vesta, Peter Pender initially, Cecil. It looks like the strongest of winds might be on the northern edge of that Boeing segment. Maybe not as strong as it once was in the southern portion, which would be now impacting Charleston. Probably some gusty winds, no question about it. But the stronger winds probably getting closer to let's say the Dyer community. Yeah, just to the south of Dyer. That's going to be moving towards Mulberry Pleasant View over the next couple of minutes. But even then, we're still talking less than severe thresholds, right? So nothing to necessarily have significant alarm over, but some gusty winds and some heavy rain that'll be tracking into Mulberry Pleasant View. This is going to be a 15-minute loop, so pretty quick loop, but it does give you a general idea of that northeasterly track that it's going to take the good chunk of that cell out of Crawford into western Franklin and eventually into the northern half of Franklin County.
Yeah, and a quick power outage update. LaFleur County is now up to 870 power outages from the latest update. So
what was it earlier, 700 something?
yeah, 771. Okay. So
okay.
We've doubled that by almost 100 right now. So we're not talking thousands, but some of these more rural communities, 870. That's quite a lot. So, we ought to put that photo up here just again with the phone number here just to see, now that things are starting to wind down. Send us your photos, your videos, your reports, whatever it is. 479-785-5000. We're checking those and we'll let you know if anything comes in, any sort of information that would be helpful to pass along. We see stuff with the radar, we see it with our cameras, but we can't be everywhere. So you get to be our eyes on the ground when it's safe to do so. Send us those videos, send us those pictures and reports. Let us know the location. And, for instance, if it's some flooding in some creek or if it's damage on a road, let us know the town, the location, the road, all of that. It's helpful for us to pass along. Really, not a whole lot to kind of...
I think I'm at a point where I'm comfortable enough to go ahead and kind of wrap things up for us here officially. That cell's continued to weaken. It's been below severe limits for probably the last 15, 16 minutes exactly. Warning expired at 7:15. We stuck with it just to make sure it didn't try to pulse back up, and ever since then it's continued to weaken. So got some gusty winds probably coming through the southern portion of Franklin County. It's not severe. It's nothing to be worried about. We're not leaving you hanging. We're not leaving you out to dry weather-wise. It's just some gusty winds that are far from severe. Some heavy rain potentially at times through the River Valley, light to moderate in northwest Arkansas. And that's likely going to be it. Our tornado watch does technically continue for Scott County until 10 o'clock. Trust me, it's going to be allowed to expire much earlier than that, probably soon, if I had to guess. Everywhere else is either canceled or never was under a watch to begin with. Joshua, wrapping it up with some final thoughts?
Yeah, thankful that it's starting to wind down.
Oh, Joshua, there you go. Okay, we lost your mic for a second. You're back.
Excuse me. It's one of those things where I'm glad it finally wound down and there we go.
Yeah, quiet.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where starting to wind down, it pulsed up real quick. We were here watching it all day, and that one little storm became a big issue. We had that first tornado warning with it. No confirmation of a tornado, so those who are wondering, do we have a confirmed tornado? We don't right now. We'll let you know if we get any sort of damage reports or anything. That same storm went on to produce some gusty winds. We have had some wind damage with that. Now things are starting to wind down. It's just one of those things, we're behind the scenes. This is why we're here all day watching these because, it's the weekend. People may not have had this on their minds. The overall severe weather threat was not that great today. In fact, it was very low, but there was just enough in the atmosphere that these tapped into just enough where they created some issues. So that's why we're here for you. That's why we have these live streams. 5+ is an incredible platform because, when we can't make it on to the TV, we can get on this and we can, come right to you and let you know, hey, we got this going on. We're going to be tracking it very closely. So, fortunately, not a whole lot to kind of harp on about right now. So.
We'll go ahead and wrap things up for all of us here at 5 News, Joshua Weisel, myself, and the team behind the scenes. That'll wrap it up for this live stream right here. If anything else happens, then of course we'll fire one right back up. Don't expect that to be the case for the most of this evening, but we'll be here watching closely over the next couple of hours as this line continues to move through. We hope you have a good rest of your weekend.